The pain was the first thing Daehan felt when consciousness returned to him. It burned through every nerve in his body like liquid fire. His eyes snapped open, and the bright lights of the medical bay stabbed into his vision. He tried to move, but heavy metal restraints held his arms and legs down against the cold examination table. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Daehan could feel it in his bones, in his skin, in the way his body felt both too heavy and too light at the same time. He turned his head to the side and saw his reflection in the polished metal wall. For a moment, he did not recognize what he was looking at. The creature in the reflection had patches of silver crystalline fur growing from its face and neck. Its jaw was elongated, almost like a wolf, but twisted at an unnatural angle. One eye was larger than the other, glowing with a sickly yellow light. The arms visible in the reflection were misshapen, with bones jutting out at wrong angles under the skin. Daehan wanted to scream, but his throat produced only a strangled growl. The door to the medical bay slid open with a soft hiss. Commander. Hyunwoo entered, his purple Vraxian skin smooth and perfect, his uniform crisp and decorated with medals. Behind him came Dr. Minho, the chief geneticist, carrying a data tablet. Both of them looked at Daehan with expressions he had never seen directed at him before: disgust, disappointment, fear. Subject 7 is awake, Dr. Minho said, his voice flat and clinical. He tapped on his tablet, not meeting Daehan's eyes. The modifications have stabilized, but not as intended. The genetic sequences rejected proper integration. Commander Hyunwoo stepped closer, stopping just outside of arm's reach. He studied Daehan the way one might study a broken machine. This was supposed to be our perfect warrior. Enhanced strength, rapid healing, heightened senses. Instead, we have this. Please, Daehan managed to croak out. His voice sounded wrong, distorted by his changed jaw. Help me. Fix this. There is nothing to fix, Commander Hyunwoo said coldly. The process cannot be reversed. The genetic damage is permanent. He turned to Dr. Minho. How many others survived the process? None, Commander. Subject 7 is the only one. The others either died during modification or had to be terminated when they became unstable. Then the program is a failure. Commander Hyunwoo's words fell like a death sentence. The Vraxian Empire has no use for deformed soldiers. We represent perfection and strength. This creature represents neither. Daehan felt panic rising in his chest. He had volunteered for this program. He had been a good soldier, loyal and strong. They had promised him he would become something greater, an elite warrior who would bring honor to his family name. Instead, they had turned him into a monster. What will you do with me? Daehan asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Dr. Minho finally looked up from his tablet. For just a moment, something like guilt flashed across his face. The termination protocols will be quick. You will not feel pain. You are going to kill me because I am ugly, Daehan's voice broke. Because your experiment failed. You are a liability, Commander Hyunwoo said. If word spread that our genetic enhancement program produced this, it would damage the Empire's reputation. Better that you never existed at all. He nodded to Dr. Minho. Prepare the injections. I want this done within the hour. Then destroy all records of Subject 7. The two Vraxians left the room, their conversation continuing in low tones outside the door. Daehan lay there staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He had given everything to the Empire. He had trained since childhood to be a soldier. He had sacrificed comfort, relationships, and peace to serve. And now they would throw him away like garbage because he did not look right. Rage began to burn through the despair. Daehan tested his restraints, pulling against them. The metal groaned but held. He pulled harder, ignoring the pain as the edges cut into his deformed wrists. His new body might be twisted and wrong, but he could feel strength in it, raw, uncontrolled strength. One of the restraints snapped with a sharp crack. Daehan froze, listening. The guards outside had not heard it over their conversation. He worked on the second restraint, bracing his freed hand against the table and pulling with all his might. His muscles burned, his bones ached, but the metal began to bend. With a final wrench, it broke free. Moving quickly now, he freed his legs. Every movement sent waves of pain through his body, but fear pushed him forward. He slid off the table, his legs nearly buckling under his weight. His center of balance was all wrong now, his body proportioned differently than before. Dahan stumbled to the medical supply cabinet and pulled out a standard uniform. It barely fit over his changed body, but it was better than the hospital gown. He grabbed a small medical kit and shoved it into a pocket. Then he moved to the door. Through the small window, he could see 2 guards stationed outside, their backs turned as they talked with Dr. Minho and Commander Hyun-woo further down the corridor. The medical bay was in a remote section of the ship. If he could reach the evacuation pods, he might have a chance. Dahan opened the door slowly, staying low. The guards did not turn. He crept down the corridor in the opposite direction, his new claws making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor that made him wince with each step. The ship's layout was burned into his memory from years of service. Left turn, then right, then down 2 levels to the evacuation bay. An alarm began to blare. They had discovered his escape. Dahan abandoned stealth and ran. His twisted legs carried him forward in a strange loping gait that felt more animal than humanoid, but it was fast, faster than he had ever run before. He burst through a maintenance door and tumbled down a ladder shaft, catching himself on lower rungs and dropping level by level. Shouts echoed above him. Energy weapons fired, their blasts scorching the walls near his head. Dahan did not stop. He could see the evacuation bay entrance ahead. 2 more guards stood there, raising their weapons as they spotted him. He charged at them, no longer caring about strategy or training. His modified body moved on instinct. He ducked under the first energy blast and slammed into the nearest guard, sending the Vraxian flying into the wall. The second guard got off a shot that burned across Dahan's shoulder, but then he was inside the bay. Dahan threw himself into the nearest evacuation pod and slammed his palm on the emergency launch button. The pod's door sealed shut just as more guards arrived. Through the small viewport, he could see them pounding on the hull, their faces twisted in anger. Then the pod launched, explosive bolts firing it away from the ship with crushing force. Dahan was pressed back into the seat, his vision dimming at the edges. Through the viewport, he could see the massive Vraxian vessel, the Eternity's Edge, growing smaller. Beyond it was a blue and green planet, swirled with white clouds. The pod's automatic systems locked onto the planet's gravity well and began descent. Dahan had no idea what world this was or if it could support Vraxian life. He did not care. Anything was better than death at the hands of those who should have protected him. As the pod began to shake with atmospheric entry, Dahan caught one last glimpse of the Eternity's Edge. It was not pursuing. Commander Hyun-woo had decided he was not worth the effort of retrieval. They would report him as dead, a failed experiment disposed of, and move on with their perfect lives. But Dahan was alive, broken, twisted, abandoned, but alive. The planet rushed up to meet him, its surface covered in green forests and blue oceans. The pod's alarms screamed warnings about the descent angle being too steep, about the landing being uncontrolled, about probable impact damage. Dahan strapped himself in tighter and closed his eyes. Whatever came next, it could not be worse than what he was leaving behind. The crash was worse than Dahan had expected. The pod tore through tree branches and slammed into the mountainside with a force that would have killed an unmodified Vraxian. He felt ribs crack, felt his head bounce off the safety harness, felt the world spin into darkness. When he woke again, it was night. Or at least he thought it was night. The sky visible through the cracked viewport was dark and filled with unfamiliar stars. Everything hurt. His body, already damaged from the failed modifications, now screamed with new injuries. He could taste blood in his mouth, thick and wrong. Dahan forced the pod door open. It fell away with a groan of twisted metal and cool air rushed in. The air was rich with oxygen, filled with scents he did not recognize. Growing things, water, animal life. He dragged himself out of the pod and collapsed onto soft ground covered in strange vegetation. He should assess his situation. Find shelter. Treat his wounds. But exhaustion and pain dragged him down into darkness again. The sun was high when consciousness returned. Dahan's eyes cracked open to see a pale yellow star very different from Vraxia's red sun. He was lying at the base of a steep slope, his body half buried in dirt and leaves. The escape pod was visible upslope, a twisted piece of metal that had torn a path through the forest. Moving hurt. Everything hurt. But Dahan forced himself to sit up. His medical training from before the modifications kicked in automatically. He checked his body for serious damage. 3 ribs definitely broken, deep cuts on his arms and legs, his left ankle swollen and possibly fractured. The crystalline patches on his skin had cracked in places, leaking a glowing fluid that mixed with regular blood. He pulled the medical kit from his pocket. It had survived the crash. The supplies inside were basic, meant for minor injuries, but it was better than nothing. Dahan wrapped his ribs as best he could and sealed the worst cuts with medical adhesive. The pain made his vision swim. A sound froze him in place. Footsteps. Light and careful, but definitely footsteps. Something was approaching through the trees. Dahan tried to stand, but his injured leg would not hold his weight. He bared his teeth and growled. A warning that came from some deep animal part of his modified brain. Whatever was coming, he would fight. He had not survived abandonment and a crash just to die in an alien forest. The creature that stepped into view was small, smaller than a Vraxian with smooth brown skin and black hair tied back from its face. It wore simple clothes and carried a bag over one shoulder. When it saw Dahan, it stopped and made a sound of surprise. Dahan growled louder, trying to look threatening despite being unable to stand. The creature took a step back but did not run. Its eyes were wide as it looked at him, not with hatred or disgust, but with something else, something Dahan could not quite identify. The creature spoke. The words meant nothing to Dahan, but the tone was soft, cautious but not aggressive. It slowly reached into its bag and pulled out a small device. After pressing several buttons, it pointed the device at Dahan and spoke again. Still, the words made no sense. The creature frowned and adjusted the device. It spoke a third time, and now Dahan heard his own language mixed with the alien sounds. The device was translating. "Not hurt you," the creature said through the translator. The grammar was wrong, but the meaning was clear. "You injured? Need help? Stay back," Dahan managed to say. His translator implant built into his jaw caught the words and transmitted them to the creature's device. "My name Jiwoo," the creature said. It pointed to itself. "I doctor. Animal doctor. You hurt bad?" It gestured at Dahan's wounds, at the glowing blood seeping through his bandages. Dahan stared at this Jiwoo. An animal doctor. On Vraxia, doctors would never treat someone like him, someone deformed and cast out. Yet this alien was offering help. "Why, what did it want?" "Why help me?" Dahan asked. Jiwoo tilted its head, seeming confused by the question. "You alive, you hurt. I help living things." It said this as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Before Dahan could respond, Jiwoo pulled out another device from its bag. This one looked like a small weapon. Dahan tensed, but then Jiwoo did something strange. It pressed the device against its own arm and triggered it. There was a soft hiss and Jiwoo's eyes drooped for a moment before clearing. "See? Safe," Jiwoo said, holding up the device. "Make sleep, no pain. I fix you." It was a sedative injector. Jiwoo was showing him that it was not poison, that it was offering mercy from pain. Dan looked at this small alien creature offering trust to a monster it had just met. Every instinct told him to refuse, to stay alert and defensive. But the pain was overwhelming, and something in Jiwoo's expression made him want to believe. "Do it," Dahan said quietly. Jiwoo moved closer, slowly and carefully, like approaching a wounded animal, which Dahan supposed he was. The injector pressed against his neck, and there was the same soft hiss. Warmth spread through Dahan's body, and the terrible pain began to fade. His eyes grew heavy. "Safe now," Jiwoo's voice came from far away. "I call sister. We help you." Darkness took him again, but this time it was gentle. When Dahan woke next, he was no longer in the forest. He lay on a soft surface in a small room with white walls. Medical equipment surrounded him, though it was primitive compared to Vraxian technology. His wounds had been cleaned and properly bandaged. An IV line ran into his arm, feeding him fluids and probably nutrients. The door opened and Jiwoo entered, followed by another creature. This one was younger, with lighter skin and shorter hair. Both of them stopped when they saw his eyes were open. "You awake," Jiwoo said, sounding relieved. "Good, very good." She gestured to the other creature. "This my sister, Samin. She study aliens. Study xenobiology." Somin stared at Dahan with intense fascination. She pulled out a scanning device and waved it over him, reading data that appeared on a small screen. Her eyes grew wider with each passing second. "Your biology is impossible," Somin said through her translator. Her grammar was better than Jiwoo's. "3 different genetic structures fighting each other. You should be dead." "The modifications failed," Daehan said. His voice was stronger now, the rest and treatment having helped. "My people tried to make me a better warrior. Instead, they made me this. Your people did this to you on purpose?" Jiwoo's voice was filled with horror. "Why? To create perfect soldiers. Enhanced strength, healing, senses. But my body rejected it. The changes went wrong." Daehan looked down at his twisted hands. "I became defective. So they tried to kill me. I escaped and crashed here." Somin and Jiwoo exchanged looks. Somin said something in their language that the translator did not catch. Jiwoo responded, her voice firm. Finally, Somin nodded. "You safe here," Jiwoo said. "We not tell others about you, not yet. You need time to heal." "Why?" Daehan asked again. "Why help me? I am a monster. An alien monster who crashed on your world." Jiwoo moved closer and did something that shocked Daehan to his core. She reached out and gently placed her hand on his arm, on the twisted, crystal-covered skin that had made even Vraxian doctors flinch away. "You not monster?" Jiwoo said softly. "You hurt? You scared? You need help. That all I see." Tears burned in Daehan's eyes. He had not cried since childhood. Vraxian warriors did not cry. But he was not a Vraxian warrior anymore. He was not sure what he was. And this small alien creature was showing him more kindness than his own people ever had. "Thank you," he whispered. Over the following days, Daehan learned about his rescuers and their world. The planet was called Earth. Jiwoo and Somin were humans from a nation called Korea. They lived in a small village in the mountains, far from large cities. Jiwoo treated sick animals at her clinic, while Somin studied at a university and came home to visit. The humans treated him with a gentleness he had never known. They brought him food, adjusted his medicine, and sat with him while he recovered. Somin studied his biology with fascination but never made him feel like a specimen. Jiwoo checked his wounds with the same care she would give any patient. Slowly, carefully, Daehan began to tell them his story. About Vraxia and its empire, about being a soldier who volunteered for glory and got horror instead, about the abandonment in the crash. The sisters listened without judgment. "Your people very cruel," Jiwoo said one evening as she changed his bandages. "Throw away someone just because body different. Very cruel." "That is the Vraxian way," Daehan said. "Perfection and strength above all else. There is no room for weakness or deformity." Somin looked up from her scanner. "But you are not weak. My readings show your strength is increasing every day. Your healing factor is remarkable. Whatever they did to you, it is working. Just not the way they expected." Daehan looked at his hands. The crystalline patches had stopped growing and seemed to have stabilized. The pain had faded to a dull ache. His body still looked wrong, still moved wrong, but it was adapting. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Maybe I am not a failed experiment. Maybe I am just a different kind of success." Jiwoo smiled at him. It was the first smile anyone had given him since the modifications began. 6 months had passed since the crash. Daehan stood in the garden behind Jiwoo's clinic, moving through a series of exercises that would have seemed strange to any Vraxian observer. His movements blended the rigid combat forms of his old life with flowing human martial arts techniques. He had learned to work with his changed body instead of fighting against it. The morning sun felt warm on his crystalline skin. The patches that had once caused him such pain now caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. His misshapen legs, which had made him stumble and fall in those early days, now gave him a unique balance and power in his movements. "Better," called a voice from the porch. Taejin sat there, drinking tea and watching Daehan's practice. The older human had become an unexpected friend. A former soldier himself, Taejin had seen past Daehan's appearance to recognize a fellow warrior carrying the weight of service. Daehan finished his form and joined Taejin on the porch. The human poured him a cup of tea and they sat in comfortable silence. This was another thing Daehan had learned from humans. Sometimes quiet company was better than words. "You move better now," Taejin said eventually. "Less like you are fighting your own body. More like you understand it." "I am learning," Daehan agreed. "On Vraxia, we were taught there was one correct way to fight, one correct form, one correct technique. But you showed me that there are many ways to be strong." Taejin smiled. "Every body is different. Every fighter must find their own path. Your path is unique, yes, but that makes you unpredictable. Hard to fight against. They had been sparring regularly for months now. At first, Dahan had held back, afraid of hurting the smaller human. Then Tajin had swept his legs out from under him and pinned him in 3 seconds. Dahan had learned to respect human skill over human size. The back door opened and Yuna emerged, carrying a basket of books. The school teacher had become another regular visitor. She had appointed herself Dahan's guide to human culture, bringing him stories, music, and art. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "I brought new books today. Poetry, history, and a novel about a lonely creature who learns to love." Dahan had learned to read Korean over the past months. His Vraxian education had been purely military, but now he devoured everything Yuna brought him. Human literature amazed him. These short-lived beings created such beauty, such depth of feeling in their brief time alive. "Thank you," he said, taking the basket. "I finished the book about the human war. The one you called World War II. "What did you think?" Yuna asked, settling onto a cushion. "I think humans understand the cost of war better than Vraxians do," Dahan said slowly. "You remember the individuals who die. You write their names down. You tell their stories. Vraxians only count victories and defeats." "Everyone matters," Yuna said simply. "Every life has value. Is that not how it should be?" Before Dahan could answer, Jiwoo came running out of the clinic, her phone pressed to her ear. Her face was tense with worry. She spoke rapidly in Korean, then ended the call and looked at Dahan. "We have problem," she said. "Big problem. Government scientist is coming here. She tracked energy signals from your crash. She will be here tomorrow." Dahan felt his hearts begin to race. 6 months of peace, and now it was ending. Should I run, hide? Soman emerged from the clinic behind her sister. She had been staying at the house more often lately, using her university equipment to study Dahan's ongoing biological changes. "No running will make you look dangerous. We need to handle this carefully. What is this scientist's name?" Taejin asked, his old soldier's instincts sharpening. "Dr. Yoonji," Jiwoo said. "She works for a government department that investigates unusual events. She has the authority to bring military forces if she thinks there is a threat." That night, Dahan barely slept. He had grown comfortable in his small room at the clinic. He had begun to think of this place as home, these humans as his pack. The thought of losing it all made his chest ache. Dr. Yoonji arrived at noon the next day. She was older than Jiwoo and Soman, with gray in her hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a practical suit and carried several scanning devices. 2 government vehicles had parked outside the clinic, but she entered alone. Dahan stood in the center of the clinic's main room. He had decided to face this human directly rather than hide like a criminal. If she decided he was a threat, running would only prove her right. Dr. Yoonji stopped in the doorway when she saw him. Her hand moved towards something at her belt, possibly a weapon, but then she forced herself to relax. She studied Dahan with an intensity that reminded him of Vraxian scientists examining their specimens. "You are the source of the energy signatures," she said. "Not a question." "A statement, yes," Dahan replied. "You are not from Earth, no. Are you alone? Are more of your kind coming?" "I am alone. My kind abandoned me here." Dr. Yoonji's eyes narrowed. "Why would they abandon you?" Dahan gestured at his twisted form. "Look at me. I am the result of a failed experiment. My people value perfection. I am the opposite of perfect." Soman stepped forward. "Dr. Yoonji, I am a xenobiology researcher. I have been studying Dahan's biology for 6 months. He poses no threat to Earth or its people. His body is stabilizing in remarkable ways. You have been studying an alien life form without reporting it to the proper authorities," Dr. Yoonji said coldly. "That is a serious violation." "He was dying," Jiwoo said, her voice firm. "I am a doctor. I could not let him die. Would you have me ignore someone who needs help just because they look different?" Dr. Yoonji was silent for a long moment. Then she turned back to Dahan. "I need to scan you properly, and you need to answer many questions. If you cooperate, we can discuss this situation calmly. If you refuse, I will have no choice but to call in military support." "I will cooperate," Dahan said. Over the next 3 days, Dr. Yoonji conducted extensive tests. She was thorough and professional, but Dahan could sense her fear. Every human he had met so far had shown him kindness, but Dr. Yoonji saw him as a potential threat to her world. He could not blame her for that. On the fourth day, Dr. Yunji asked Daehan to walk with her in the garden. Taejin and the sisters watched nervously from the porch, but Daehan followed the scientist outside. Your biology is stabilizing, Dr. Yunji said without preamble. The chaotic genetic sequences that should have killed you are instead organizing into something new. Something that has never existed before. Someone told me something similar, Daehan said. What she could not tell you because she lacks the equipment is that you are still changing. Your body is adapting to Earth's environment. The oxygen levels, the gravity, even the solar radiation. Your cells are incorporating elements of Earth's biology. Daehan stopped walking. What does that mean? It means the modifications your people forced on you were not a failure. They were incomplete. Your body needed the right environment to finish the process. Dr. Yunji pulled out a tablet and showed him images of cellular structures. Look, these are your cells from 3 days ago. These are from today. The improvement is measurable. You are becoming stronger, more stable, more integrated. I am evolving, Daehan said quietly. Yes. And that presents Earth with a difficult choice. Dr. Yunji looked up at him. You claim your people abandoned you, but you have extensive knowledge of alien technology and presumably alien military tactics. You could be incredibly valuable to Earth's defense, or you could be a threat if you decide humans are your enemies. I would never hurt them, Daehan said immediately. They saved my life. They showed me kindness when my own people wanted me dead. I believe you mean that now, Dr. Yunji said. But situations change. Loyalties shift. I need more than good intentions. They walked in silence for a few minutes. Then Dr. Yunji spoke again. I am going to make a recommendation to my superiors. I want to bring you to a secure government facility. Not as a prisoner, but as a guest. There we can continue studying your biology, and you can share your knowledge of your people. In exchange, Earth will offer you protection and resources, and if I refuse, then you become a security risk. And security risks get locked away, usually forever. It was not really a choice, but Dr. Yunji was giving him the illusion of one. Daehan appreciated that small dignity. I will come, he said, but I want permission to visit here. These people are my family now. Dr. Yunji raised an eyebrow. Your family? Family is not just blood, Daehan said. I learned that from humans. Family is who stays when everyone else leaves. Something shifted in Dr. Yunji's expression. For the first time, she looked at him not as a threat or a specimen, but as a person. All right, she said. We have an agreement. The next week, Daehan found himself in a government research facility 2 hours from Jiwoo's clinic. The scientists here were professional and respectful, but they lacked the warmth of his small mountain family. Still, the work was important. Dr. Hajun, the lead geneticist, was particularly fascinated by Daehan's ongoing changes. The older scientist ran test after test, always explaining what he was looking for and why it mattered. Your body is not just adapting, Dr. Hajun explained one day. It is improving the original modifications. Look at these neural pathways. Your reaction time is faster than any recorded human or, I would guess, any member of your original species. 1 year after the crash, Daehan stood in a military briefing room facing a dozen high-ranking Earth officers. Admiral Kyung-soo sat at the head of the table, her weathered face stern as she listened to Daehan explain Vraxian battle tactics. On the screens behind him were diagrams he had drawn, showing ship formations and weapons capabilities. The Vraxian Empire believes in overwhelming force, Daehan said, pointing to the main screen. They will send scout ships first to evaluate your technology level. If they determine you are primitive, they will send a subjugation fleet. If they determine you are advanced, they will send a war fleet. What is the difference? Asked one of the generals. A subjugation fleet is designed to conquer with minimal damage to infrastructure. They want to claim resources and labor. A war fleet is designed to completely destroy any threat. Daehan paused. Based on Earth's current technology, they will likely send a subjugation fleet. They will not expect resistance. Admiral Kyung-soo leaned forward. And that gives us an advantage. Yes. Surprise can overcome superior firepower if used correctly. Daehan changed the display to show weak points in Vraxian ship designs. I can teach you where to strike for maximum damage, but you must understand, even a subjugation fleet has enough power to destroy every major city on Earth if they choose to do so. The room fell silent. The weight of what was coming pressed down on everyone. How long do we have? Admiral Kyungsu asked. Their scout ships arrived 2 months ago. They have been observing from the outer system. Based on standard procedures, the main fleet will arrive within 3 to 6 months. They move slowly because they believe time is always on their side. After the meeting, Dr. Hajun pulled Daehan aside. The geneticist looked excited in a way that made Daehan nervous. I have been analyzing your latest cellular samples, Dr. Hajun said. The changes are accelerating. Look at this. He showed Daehan a microscopic image. Your cells are developing new structures. I believe you are developing new abilities. What kind of abilities? I am not entirely sure yet. But your neural pathways are showing increased activity in regions associated with sensory processing. You may be developing enhanced perception beyond just better sight or hearing. Over the following weeks, Daehan discovered what Dr. Hajun meant. He began to sense things he could not see or hear. When humans entered a room, he could feel their emotional states like colors in his mind. Fear was sharp and yellow. Anger was hot and red. Happiness was warm and gold. Sadness was heavy and blue. At first, it was overwhelming. He could feel the fear radiating from the military personnel who worked with him. They were afraid of the coming Vraxians. Afraid of what war would mean. Afraid even of Daehan himself, despite his help. Taejin noticed the change during one of Daehan's visits to the mountain clinic. You seem distracted, the old soldier said. Something is troubling you. I can feel what people are feeling now, Daehan admitted. It is like a new sense, and I feel so much fear around me. From the soldiers, from the scientists, even from you sometimes. Taejin nodded slowly. Fear is natural when facing the unknown, but fear can also make us strong if we do not let it control us. He poured them both tea. You feel my fear. But do you also feel my trust? Daehan focused on Taejin's presence. Yes, there was fear, but beneath it was something solid and steady. Trust. Confidence. Yes, I feel it. Then remember that when you train the soldiers, they are afraid, but they trust you to prepare them. Do not let their fear become your burden. The training intensified. Daehan worked with Earth's military forces every day, teaching them about Vraxian technology and tactics. But he also insisted on teaching them about Vraxian psychology and culture. He wanted humans to understand their enemy, not just fight them. Vraxians value strength and perfection above all else, he explained to a group of pilots. They view anything different as weak. This makes them predictable in some ways. They will always expect you to fight in conventional patterns, so do not fight conventionally. Be unpredictable. Use strategies they consider weak or foolish. That confusion will be your weapon. Between training sessions, Daehan returned to the clinic as often as permitted. It was his refuge, the place where he could be himself instead of a military asset. And it was there that he met someone who would change his perspective once again. Youngmi was 8 years old. She had been coming to Jiwoo's clinic for treatments related to a genetic disorder that made her bones fragile. She was thin and pale, but her eyes were bright with curiosity. The first time she saw Daehan, she stared at him for a long moment. He braced himself for the fear or disgust he had seen in so many faces. Instead, Youngmi smiled. You look like a character from my storybook, she said. Are you a guardian spirit? Daehan blinked in surprise. I am an alien, I know. Aunt Jiwoo told me. But aliens can be guardian spirits too, right? From that day on, Youngmi insisted on spending time with Daehan during her clinic visits. She showed him her drawings, told him stories from school, and asked endless questions about space and other worlds. She was completely unafraid of his appearance. Does it hurt? She asked one day, pointing at his crystalline patches. Not anymore. It did at first, but now it is just part of me. Like my bones, Youngmi said thoughtfully. They hurt sometimes, but they are still part of me. My mom says being different is not bad. It just means we have to be braver. Daehan felt something crack open in his chest. This small, fragile human child understood something that the entire Vraxian Empire could not grasp. Being different did not mean being lesser. It just meant being different. Your mother is very wise, he said softly. Youngmi leaned against his arm, careful of the sharp edges of his crystalline fur. Will you tell me a story about space? So Daehan told her stories, not about war or the Empire, but about the beautiful things he had seen in his travels. Nebulas that glowed like paintings, planets with rings of ice that sparkled in starlight, space stations where hundreds of species traded goods and ideas. Space sounds wonderful, Youngmi said. I want to go there someday. Perhaps you will, Daehan said. By the time you are old enough, humans may have ships that can travel to the stars. Will you still be here? Will you come with me? The question made Dahan's heart ache. Would he still be here? That depended entirely on what happened when the Vraxian fleet arrived. Dr. Hajun called him back to the research facility a week later. The scientist's face was grave. We need to talk about Youngmi, Dr. Hajun said. Dahan felt sudden fear. Is she all right? Has her condition worsened? No, in fact, her condition has improved. Dramatically. Dr. Hajun pulled up medical scans. Look at her bone density from 6 months ago. Now look at her scans from yesterday. The improvement is remarkable. That is good news. Why do you look worried? Because I compared her genetic markers from 6 months ago to now. Dahan, her DNA is changing. Small changes, but measurable. And the changes match patterns I have seen in your DNA. The implications hit Dahan like a physical blow. I'm affecting her biology? Just by being near her? Not just her.
I have been quietly testing the other humans who spend the most time with you.
Jiwoo, Somin, Taijin, Yuna. They all show minor genetic changes. Nothing dramatic, but present. Your body seems to be emitting some kind of field that encourages adaptive evolution in nearby organisms. Am I hurting them? Dahan felt panic rising. No, the opposite. The changes are all beneficial. Improved healing, stronger immune systems, increased cellular efficiency. It is as if your presence is gently guiding their biology toward optimization. But this raises questions about what you are becoming. Dahan sat down heavily. I am a weapon that the Vraxians created but could not control. Now I am something else entirely. Something that changes other living things just by existing near them. You are not a weapon, Dr. Hajun said firmly. Weapons only destroy. You are something humanity has never encountered before, a catalyst for evolution, a living bridge between species. Over the next months, Dahan trained harder than ever. The Vraxian fleet was getting closer. Long-range sensors tracked their progress. Earth's military forces prepared as best they could. But everyone knew it would not be enough if the Vraxians decided on total war. Admiral Kyung-soo called a final strategy meeting. The Vraxian scout ships will make contact within 2 weeks. We need to present a united front, show strength but also intelligence. We need them to talk instead of attack. They will not talk to humans, Dahan said. To them you are primitive, but they might talk to me. You want to be our ambassador? Dr. Yoonji asked. I am uniquely positioned. I know their language, their customs, their psychology, and I am living proof that their ideas about perfection are wrong. Dahan looked around the table at the human faces he had come to respect and care for. I can be a bridge between our peoples, or I can be a wall they break themselves against. Let me try to be a bridge first. Admiral Kyung-soo studied him for a long moment. If this fails, if they reject you, we will have shown them that Earth has knowledge of their species. That might make them more aggressive. It might, Dahan agreed. But it also might make them cautious. And caution creates opportunities, the Admiral nodded slowly. The Vraxian fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm made of metal and malice. 12 massive warships arranged in perfect geometric formation, their hulls gleaming purple-black against the darkness of space. Admiral Seojin, commander of the fleet, stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Pride and studied the primitive blue planet before her. Initial scans complete, her tactical officer reported. Technology level assessment, early space age. No unified defense grid, no energy shields. Conventional projectile and chemical weapons only. Exactly as the scout reports indicated, Admiral Seojin said with satisfaction. This will be a simple subjugation. Prepare first contact protocols. We will offer them the honor of joining the Empire peacefully. In Earth's orbital defense station, alarms blared. Captain Jisoo watched the Vraxian fleet position itself and felt her mouth go dry. 12 warships. Any one of them could likely destroy the entire station in seconds. And Earth's forces consisted of 3 experimental defense platforms and a handful of retrofitted military satellites. Open a channel to ground command, she ordered. Tell them the Vraxians are here. Far below in a secure government bunker, Admiral Kyung-soo received the message. She looked across the command center to where Dahan stood, his crystalline patches glowing faintly in the dim light. He looked calm, but she could see the tension in his altered frame. Are you ready? She asked. As ready as I can be, Dahan replied. Open the communications channel. Let me talk to them first. The communication screens flickered to life. Admiral Seojin's face appeared, her purple skin and sharp features displaying typical Vraxian contempt for lesser species. Then Dahan stepped into view and her expression changed to shock. Impossible, Admiral Seojin breathed. Subject 7, you are supposed to be dead. I was abandoned to die, Daehan said calmly. But these humans found me and chose mercy over fear. They healed me. They accepted me. And in doing so, they showed me what true strength looks like. Behind Admiral Seojin, other Vraxians crowded around to see. Daehan recognized Commander Hyunwoo, older now, his face twisted with disbelief and something that might have been shame. You survived, Commander Hyunwoo said. The crash should have killed you. It nearly did. But human medicine and human compassion kept me alive, and in the 2 years since you left me to die, I have evolved beyond what your rigid programs could ever achieve. Dr. Minho's face appeared on another screen. The geneticist who had prepared Daehan's termination looked haunted. Your biology, he whispered. It stabilized. The modifications completed themselves. Not completed, Daehan corrected. Transcended. You tried to force 3 genetic templates into one rigid structure. It failed because you did not account for adaptation. My body needed time and the right environment to integrate the changes. Earth gave me that. Admiral Seojin recovered from her shock and her face hardened. This changes nothing. You are a failed experiment that somehow survived. These primitives are still primitives. This world will be incorporated into the Empire. The only question is whether they surrender peacefully or require force. They require neither, Daehan said, because I will not allow you to harm them. You? Commander Hyunwoo laughed bitterly. You are one defective soldier against an entire fleet. What can you possibly do? I can show you what you created and were too blind to see. Daehan stepped back and the camera angle widened to show the room behind him. Dozens of human soldiers stood there, each one trained in the tactics and strategies Daehan had taught them. I can show you that knowledge shared freely is more powerful than force applied brutally. And I can show you this, Daehan moved. Faster than any unmodified being should be able to move. He crossed the room in a blur, scaled a wall using his crystalline claws, and landed in a perfect combat stance that blended Vraxian and human techniques. The display was designed to shock, and it worked. Every Vraxian on the screen stared in disbelief. This is what adaptation creates, Daehan said. Strength beyond programming. Evolution beyond design. I am what your perfect soldiers could have been if you had not been so afraid of anything different. Admiral Seojin's face was unreadable. Impressive, but ultimately meaningless. Even if you have become a superior warrior, you are still just one being. We have thousands. Then let me propose something, Admiral Kyung-soo said, stepping into view beside Daehan. A demonstration. Your finest warrior against ours. If Daehan wins, you negotiate with Earth as equals. If your warrior wins, we will at least hear your terms for surrender. It was a gamble. A huge gamble. But it was also the kind of challenge Vraxians could not resist. Their entire culture was built on proving superiority through combat. Admiral Seojin considered for a long moment. Agreed, but I choose the battlefield and the terms. 1 week from now on the 3rd moon of your outer gas giant. No weapons, hand-to-hand combat only. Our champion against yours. To submission or death. Accepted, Admiral Kyung-soo said before Daehan could protest the death clause. The screens went dark. In the command center, people began talking at once. Daehan turned to Admiral Kyung-soo. I did not agree to fight to the death, he said quietly. I know, but Seojun needed to save face in front of her crew. She cannot appear soft on primitives. The death clause is for show. She will not enforce it if the fight shows clear superiority. The Admiral studied him. But Daehan, you need to understand. This is everything. If you lose, Earth loses its chance for independence. I know. And I will not lose. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Daehan trained constantly, pushing his evolved body to its limits. Taejin worked with him on strategies. Dr. Hajun monitored his biology to ensure he was at peak performance. Soman and Jiwoo visited to provide moral support, and Youngmi sent him a drawing. It showed a figure that was clearly meant to be Daehan, covered in rainbow crystals, standing tall with Earth behind him. At the bottom, in careful child's handwriting, it said, "My friend is the strongest." Daehan kept the drawing with him. The night before the fight, he stood alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. He felt someone approach and turned to see Commander Hyunwoo's face on a private communication screen. "Why did you contact me?" Daehan asked. "To warn you," Hyunwoo said. His voice was quiet, lacking its usual arrogance. "Admiral Seojin has chosen me as the Vraxian champion. She believes my failure with you gives me motivation to win. To redeem myself. And does it? Hyunwoo was silent for a moment. I do not know. I look at what you have become and I see what I destroyed. You were a good soldier. You volunteered with honor, and I treated you as garbage when the process did not produce immediate perfection. Yes, you did. I cannot undo that, but I can tell you this, I will not hold back in our fight. I will strike to kill if necessary, not because I hate you, but because anything less would dishonor what you have become. Daehan nodded slowly. I understand, and I will meet you with the same respect. The morning of the fight arrived too quickly. Daehan traveled in a human shuttle to the designated moon. It was a barren rock with no atmosphere, chosen specifically to prevent any home field advantage. Both fighters would need environmental suits, but when Daehan arrived, he found that the Vraxians had already set up a force field dome with breathable atmosphere. A courtesy, perhaps, or maybe they wanted nothing to interfere with the purity of the combat. Human and Vraxian observers gathered at opposite sides of the arena. Daehan could see Jiwoo, Somin, Taijin, and Yuna among the humans. Youngmi had wanted to come but was too young for space travel. She would be watching via live feed back on Earth. Commander Hyunwoo stepped into the arena. He looked exactly as Daehan remembered. Perfect Vraxian symmetry. Enhanced muscles visible beneath his combat suit. Cold calculation in his eyes. The product of centuries of refined genetic engineering. Daehan stepped in to face him. His crystalline patches caught the artificial light, scattering rainbow patterns across the arena floor. His misshapen legs were planted firmly. His center of gravity adapted to his unique form, the product of accident, adaptation, and evolution. Admiral Seojin's voice echoed through the arena. This combat will determine the relationship between Vraxia and Earth. Fight with honor. Fight for your people. Begin. Hyunwoo moved first, closing the distance with Vraxian speed and precision. His attacks were textbook perfect, exactly what Daehan expected. He blocked and countered, using techniques Taijin had taught him, flowing around Hyunwoo's rigid patterns. They exchanged blows that would have killed unmodified beings. Hyunwoo's fists struck like hammers. Daehan's crystalline edges cut like blades, but neither one could gain a decisive advantage. You fight differently now, Hyunwoo said between strikes. Less Vraxian, more chaotic. Not chaotic, adaptive. Daehan ducked under a high kick and swept Hyunwoo's support leg. The Vraxian stumbled but recovered instantly. You fight the same way you fought 2 years ago, following the same programs, but I am not the same being I was 2 years ago. The fight intensified. Daehan could feel Hyunwoo's confusion growing. Every time the Vraxian adapted to one strategy, Daehan switched to another. Human boxing, Vraxian grappling,